and welcome to today's session. My name is Ken Moraguri. I'm a GMAT trainer with the Kenya Airlift program. So today we'll be looking at some inference question examples and the different ways in which you should approach these questions and how you should think about these questions when you face them in the GMAT. So we know that in as much as there are different question types, so here we are talking about inference questions, strengthening, weakening, flow questions, paradox, all those. One question type can be tested in a variety of ways. So it's not necessary that inference questions will require the same reasoning every time, but the core skill needed remains the same. That means that whatever information that you are looking for in your answer is something that must be true given what you have in your stimulus. But the difference is the way you process this information in the stimulus is what tends to differ depending on the inference question that you're facing. So attention to detail and thinking outside the box is essential. So you really have to be open, just as it applies in the entirety of the GMAT exam. You really have to train yourself to be open-minded in your approach in whatever question that you're doing. Also attention to detail, because some of the times just one single word can help make the question easier, or one single word can help you eliminate an answer choice. So we'll be using inference questions to demonstrate this, and we'll start with one easy question and then ramp up the difficulty so that we can see how different the approach is in as much as all the questions are inference questions. So here we have our first example. Please go ahead and pause, try it by yourself, and then we'll do the question together. Okay, so our question is about duck-billed dinosaurs. So like today's monitor lizards, they had particularly long tails which they could whip at considerable speed. So they use their tails to strike predators, so those are monitor lizards. However, although duck-billed tails were otherwise very similar to those of monitor lizards, the duck-bill's tail bones were proportionately much thinner and thus more delicate. Moreover, to ward off their proportionately much larger predators, duck-bills would have had to whip their tails considerably faster than monitor lizards do. So the information given, if accurate, provides the strongest support for each of the following hypotheses. So we know, of course, this is asking for an inference given the information in our stimulus. So let's look at our answer choices. So option number A, if duck-bills whipped their tails faster than monitor lizards do, the duck-bill's tail would have been effective at warding off the duck-bill's fiercest predators. So here we have, to ward off their predators, they would have to whip their tails considerably faster than monitor lizards do. So if they whipped the tails faster, the tail would have been effective at warding off these fiercest predators. So do we have information to support these? So we know the passage says that if they were to ward off these larger predators, they would have to whip their tails considerably faster. But we do not know for sure if they whipped this tail fast, would it be able to ward off these fiercest predators? So what if this predator is faster than the duck bill can whip the tail? So we do not know if for sure it would be effective. We are just saying that since monitor lizards, they use their tails to ward off predators, monitor lizards or duckbills would have to whip their tails faster than monitor lizards do, because their predators are much larger, and we know that the tails are much thinner, but we do not know how effective it would be. So A is out. B, duckbills use their tails to strike predators, and their tail bones were frequently damaged from the impact. So you'll notice from the information here, we are talking about ifs. So they would have had to whip their tails considerably faster. So our stimulus doesn't tell us that they actually use their tails to strike predators. So we cannot infer this. So B is out. C, using their tails was not the only means duckbills had for warding off predators. So this may be true, but we do not know that for sure. Also, this insinuates that they used their tails to ward off predators, which again, we are not sure of. So C is out. D, duckbills were at much greater risk of being killed by a predator than monitor lizards are. So we have an assumption, just as we had in C, that just because the tails are thinner and the predators are larger, they do not have other means of protecting themselves. So this is just making an assumption. D is out. A, the tails of duckbills, if used to ward off predators, would have been more likely than the tails of monitor lizards to sustain damage from the impact. So now here we are saying we are comparing now the tails of these two. We know monitor lizards' tails are much bigger, or these duckbill tails are much thinner, so they are more delicate. So if something is more delicate, it's most susceptible to damage than something that's not delicate. So this is something that we can infer directly from our passage. So we pick E as the answer. So here we see why we should not make assumptions and how we can think of an answer option to enable us to eliminate. So our second example, please go ahead and pause, and then we'll do it. Okay, so Mashika says, we already know from polling data that some segments of the electorate provide significant support for Mrs. Puerta. If those segments also provide significant support for Mr. Quintana, then no segment of the electorate that provides significant support to Mr. Quintana provides significant support to Mr. Ramirez. Salim says, but actually, as the latest polling data conclusively shows, at least one segment of the electorate does not provide significant support to both Quintana and Mr. Ramirez. So among the following statements, which is it most reasonable to infer from the assertions by Mashika and Salim? So again, we see it's an inference. Okay, so first of all, let's ask ourselves, what do we know for sure? So here, we already know that some segments of the electorate provide significant support for Mrs. Puerta. So this is an if. So this is just a possibility. And then Salim says, as the latest polling data conclusively shows, so this is something else that we know for sure, at least one segment of the electorate does provide significant support to both Mr. Quintana and Mr. Ramirez. So those are two things we know for sure. So among the following statements, which is most reasonable to infer from the assertions by Mashika and Salim? So let's do the quickest eliminations first. So we know that some segments provide significant support for Mrs. Puerta, and then at least one segment provides significant support to both Mr. Quintana and Mr. Ramirez. So we know at least one support these two significantly, and some segments provide significant support to Mrs. Puerto. So looking at C, D, and E, so each segment of the electorate provides significant support to Mrs. Puerta. We know it's just some, so we can eliminate C. D, each segment of the electorate provides significant support to Mr. Quintana. We just know that it's at least one. So it may be one or two or three or all, but we do not know for sure. The only thing that we're sure of is at least one segment provides significant support for Mr. Quintana. So D is out. E, each segment provides significant support for Mr. Ramirez. Again, we only know at least one. So E is out. So we are left with A and B. So A, at least one segment of the electorate provides significant support neither to Mr. Quintana nor to Mr. Ramirez. So here we know at least one segment does provide significant support to both Mr. Quintana and Mr. Ramirez. Here we say at least one segment of the electorate provides significant support neither to Mr. Quintana nor to Mr. Ramirez. So this is opposite of one fact that we know. So A is out. So hopefully B is okay. At least one segment of the electorate provides significant support to Miss Puerta, but not to Mr. Quintana. So let's think about this. So we have this as a fact that some segments provide support to Mrs. Puerta. So we have a condition. If these segments, so not if those segments which that support Miss Puerta. So if these segments also provide support for Mr. Quintana, then no segment of the electorate that provides significant support to Mr. Quintana provides significant support to Mr. Ramirez. So if this was the case, so this is the if, then any segment that supported Mr. Quintana would not provide significant support to Mr. Ramirez. So that's what we are saying. But our second fact here says that actually one segment supports significantly both Mr. Quintana and Mr. Ramirez. So what does this mean? This means that this if is not true, because if it was true, this would not be possible. So B, at least one segment of the electorate provides significant support for Mrs. Puerta, but not Mr. Quintana, because now we know that not all the segments that support Mrs. Puerta support Mr. Quintana. And since we know one supports Mr. Ramirez and Quintana, we know that there is at least one segment that supports Mrs. Puerta, but not Mr. Quintana. So for that reason, B is answer. So how we think of answer choice B is you have different scenarios. So some scenarios require something to be true, and if there is a situation where the result, so this result, we have an opposite result, then it means that at least in this situation, this is not true. So just thinking of it that way would help you infer option B as correct.
You're watching Success with Bob Mwiti Show, presented to you by Upstack America. Upstack America is a consulting company that helps immigrants find amazing higher education and job opportunities in the tech industry in the United States. You can find our programs by going to www.upstackamerica.com. Upstack America, we wake you up to the unlimited potential.
So let's go to our last example. So this is significantly more difficult than the rest. So please take 2 minutes, try and solve it, and pause, and we'll solve together. So in our example, a library currently has only coin-operated photocopy machines which cost 10 cents per copy. Library administrators are planning to refit most of those machines with card readers. The library will sell prepaid copy cards that allow users to make 50 copies at 9 cents per copy. The administrators believe that despite the convenience of copy cards and their lower per copy cost, the number of copies made in the library will be essentially unchanged after the refit. So on the assumption that the administrator's assessment is correct, so note that this gives us permission to assume that this will happen, so or is true. So which one of the following predictions about the effect of the refit is most strongly supported by the information given? Okay, so what do we know? We know the costs. The coin-operated ones are 10 cents per copy. The prepaid cards, so 50 copies at 9 cents per copy. And then we know that the number of copies will remain unchanged after the refit. So we have those information. So let's try to infer. So A, library patrons will only purchase a copy card on days when they need to make 50 or more copies. So these may or may not true. May or may not be true. Why? Because one, we do not know if these prepaid copy cards are one use. So if you assume they are one use, then this probably would be true. But if they are not one use, and you can make 10 copies today and 40 copies tomorrow, then this isn't true according to the information that we have. So A is out. B, no library patrons will increase their usage of the library's photocopy machines once the refit has been made. So for this to be true, remember we only know that the number of copies made in the library will remain unchanged. So is it true to say that no library patrons will increase their usage of the library's photocopy machines once the refit has been made? The answer is no. Why? Because even if some patrons increase, by these statements, it means probably some of them will decrease their usage. So that means it's not necessarily true that no library patrons will increase their usage. So these out, see, if most of the copy cards sold in the library are used to their full capacity, so these are the cheaper ones, the number of people using the library's photocopy machines over a given period will fall. So these copy cards are used to their full capacity. So how does the use of copy cards influence the number of people using the library's photocopy machines over a given period? So unless these photocopy machine users or libraries photocopy machines, so just because they are shifting to using copy cards doesn't mean that the number of, say, patrons will reduce. So there's no information that we're given that insinuates that remotely. So C is out. D, revenues from photocopying will decrease unless most library patrons choose to use the remaining coin-operated machines in preference to the card reader equipped ones. So we know that these prepaid copy cards are cheaper because for 50 copies you are charged for 50 cents. But previously, because of course the library currently has only coin-operated photocopy machines, for 50 copies you used, because it's 10 cents per copy, you used 500 cents. So because now these new copy cards are being introduced, this means that at least some of the patrons will be using these machines and they will be photocopying at this rate. So remember, we know that the number of copies will reduce. So if some of the copies being made are being made at a cheaper price, then this means that the revenue will decrease once these copy machines are introduced. But this is will decrease unless most library patrons choose to use the remaining coin-operated machines in preference to the card readers. So the problem is, even if 90% of the library patrons use coin-operated, the 10% that use these machines with card readers will cause the revenue to go down. So still, the revenue will increase even if most will decrease even if most library patrons choose to use the remaining coin-operated machines, unless 0% of the patrons used these and 100% of them used coin-operated photocopy machines. Then you would be sure that the revenue would at least remain the same. So most here is not enough. We need all library patrons to choose to use the coin-operated machines only. So D is out. C, revenues from photocopying will increase if copy cards that are purchased are, on average, used to significantly less than 90% of their capacity. So at first glance, probably E, someone we didn't consider, but thinking about it, what is the capacity of this card? So you can print 50 copies, so 50 copies is at 100% capacity. So if you're talking about 90%, we're talking about 45 copies. So copy cards that are purchased are on average used to significantly less than 90%. So we are not getting to 90% because 45 copies are 90%, we are going to significantly less. So let's say it's 44 copies and below. So will the revenue now increase? So what does this mean? This means that the copy cards that are being purchased, instead of printing 50 copies, they are printing less than 45. So remember, we are comparing with the revenue that we had previously. So you are paying for 50 cents because that's a constant price for these prepaid copy cards, and you're printing less than 45 copies. For the previous use, if you used for 50 cents, because the price was 10 cents per copy, you would print 45 copies. So this means that the new cards would be paying the same amount for less copies than the previous coin-operated copies, which means that the library now would actually be charging more for, or the same amount for, less copies. So of course this means that the revenue would actually increase if these were true. So if they were used on average significantly less than 90% of their capacity, so 44 copies or 43 copies and so on. So for that reason, it is out. So for this, you have to be open about thinking about the information you have in terms of math, and being willing to kind of make some calculations. So whenever you have percentages or whenever you have values in a verbal reasoning, do not think that quant or mathematical knowledge is completely separated from verbal reasoning, because as you notice, of course, this is just basic knowledge of math. So be open to that, and sometimes you'll have to do those simple calculations. So that was all we had for the class today. So please remember, be open-minded as you're doing verbal reasoning. Ensure that you read carefully, be attentive to detail, and whichever question comes and whatever shape it takes, you will comfortably be able to handle it. So thank you for watching this video, and if you wish to learn more or join GMAT training, you can do so. Join the Kenya Lift program GMAT training. So you can go to the website and join us. So thank you very much, and see you in our next lesson. Bye.